Hello, this is psychologist Yulia Latunenko with you. Today's topic is about forgiveness. As you can see, my video is titled Never Forgive This. Let's talk about situations when it's actually not worth forgiving. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, and this is your first time here, please subscribe. And don't forget to like this video and be sure to leave a comment with more than 7 words. So, about forgiveness. There are things that simply cannot be forgiven, but the stereotypical approach to forgiveness has turned into a kind of forgiveness violence. Everyone says you need to forgive him or her. And it already sounds like some kind of coercion. But very often it happens that a person cannot forgive violence or betrayal or some other very, very painful situation that occurred in their life. But they deceive themselves because everyone says you have to forgive. And sometimes this even turns into a kind of violence through forgiveness. But there are situations that cannot be forgiven. Let's talk about these situations with you today. But let's clarify what I mean when I say forgiveness. I mean a state where you have no emotions toward the person who caused you pain. I believe that this is the state when it no longer bothers you. When you talk about the situation that happened to you, you do so more calmly. You don't get drawn into very deep emotions, grief, tears, or despair. When you feel that you have let everything go, but is it possible to achieve this through forceful methods by forcing yourself to forgive? I believe it is not. Sometimes the situation is that you have already let go and feel neutral toward the person who hurt you. You may not communicate with them at all, end the relationship, or cut off contact. But sometimes it happens that the contact continues. After all, you don't feel anything toward this person, either bad nor good. But for some reason, you need to maintain this contact. That's how life is, because not everything happens perfectly. But the state of forgiveness is when the person hasn't changed and may behave toward you just as before, but you have very strong boundaries and their behavior no longer affects you emotionally. You remain neutral. But here, I want to give you an example. I was once very interested in how different sacred books in religions talk about feelings like shame, guilt, fear, aggression, and anger. That's what I mean. And here's what I found about forgiveness, which is connected to feelings like resentment and guilt. In one of the surahs of the Quran, it tells the story of how the great prophet grieved deeply for his uncle, who was killed by a non-believer. And when this non-believer converted to Islam, he came to the prophet and began to ask him for forgiveness. He did this very sincerely. He repented and said that he had accepted the faith and deeply, deeply regretted killing someone close to the prophet. And you know what the prophet replied to him? I forgive you, but go and never appear before me again. What does this mean? Did the prophet really forgive him? I believe that forgiveness happens when we forget and stop thinking about that person so often. We stop giving significance to that person. When we distance ourselves and some time passes, then we can look at the situation more neutrally and let everything go. But for this, we need time. Forcing forgiveness, it seems to me, is very cruel on the part of society and those religions that say forgiveness is absolutely necessary. But, as I said at the beginning of this video, there are different things, including those that cannot be forgiven. Let's talk about such situations. Is it possible to forgive abuse of a child, of a vulnerable child, who cannot stand up for themselves, who cannot protect themselves, who ultimately cannot fight back, who is completely defenseless and dependent on an adult? If you are the child and you keep hearing from all sides that you must forgive such things, try first before you deceive yourself or force yourself to forgive. First, try to allow yourself not to forgive what cannot be forgiven. Some people even insist aggressively, you have to forgive your parents. And they even justify the violence. But let's imagine for a moment that you have a child and some stranger does to your own child everything that your parents did to you. Would you forgive this person for abusing your child, knowing that your child could be deeply emotionally harmed by this person's actions? I don't think so. I think everyone would say, no, I would never forgive that. I would go and protect my child. But then, why do you justify everything your parents did to you? Why won't you allow yourself at first not to forgive what is hard to forgive, or even not important at all? When we see Putin and the Russians tormenting Ukrainians, tormenting innocent little children who are dying by the hundreds in different parts of Ukraine because of the shelling, because of Putin's cruelty, can we forgive him and say, well, he just had a bad childhood? He was beaten too, treated cruelly. Just like we say about our own parents, well, they had a bad childhood too. As if we are justifying evil, violence, and abuse. No, we should not justify this, because by doing so, we multiply evil on planet Earth. I believe that the first step to any apology, any sincere, deep forgiveness, is to allow yourself not to forgive if you still feel pain, and if you still see how these traumas affect your adult life. Don't make excuses for yourself. Allow yourself to first experience that state of not forgiving. But if it's hard for you, if you feel guilty, if you're pressured by social stereotypes, if you deceive yourself, force yourself to forgive, if you try to justify violence or abuse from anyone, from those adults you meet later, then you need to work on your childhood traumas, because all your abusers, all the psychopaths and narcissists you later choose as partners are only a consequence of the abuse that happened in your childhood. What else do I think you shouldn't forgive? Now we're going to talk about relationships between two adults. If in the first part we talked about the relationship between children and parents, here at the top of my list is betrayal, because betrayal is, well, a phenomenon that relates to a person's moral values. If a person believes that it's acceptable to cheat while in a relationship, that speaks to their moral values. Betrayal shouldn't be forgiven also, because it destroys trust in a relationship. After betrayal, the trust that existed before will never be the same again. And, there's no guarantee that a person with such moral values won't betray you a second time. You will never be sure of that. You can deceive yourself. You might be dependent on this person. You might turn a blind eye to the fact that this person has betrayed you. You might even make excuses for this person. But that doesn't protect you or guarantee that it won't happen again and again in your life. If you forgive betrayal once, of course you can try to forgive and rebuild a relationship with this person, but you won't escape this pattern of betrayal until you learn to put a stop to it in your life, because it's a violation of your boundaries. First and foremost, if you forgive such things, it means your boundaries have been violated. It's a sign that you treat yourself as someone who isn't valuable. It's a lack of self-respect. Betrayal is impossible to forget. Another thing I believe should never be forgiven is humiliation. If someone humiliates you, especially in public, or even if one-on-one a person says degrading, offensive things to you, labels you with very hurtful tags, gives you some very insulting diagnosis, or interprets your behavior in a deeply offensive way, belittling you and destroying your self-esteem, this should not be forgiven because you will keep facing the same problem over and over again. Humiliation. Humiliation should be on your list of red flags. Another situation where I believe you need to be very careful about continuing a relationship is after someone has borrowed money from you and doesn't pay it back or keeps postponing the repayment deadline. This is also a sign that the person does not respect your boundaries and also believes that you do not respect your own boundaries. If this has happened, and you already realize that the person will not return your money, just let it go and add this point to your own list of red flags. Simply stop lending money to people. Here's something else I believe you shouldn't forgive. When a person constantly devalues you, sometimes people don't even think it's necessary to end such relationships. The person keeps devaluing you, criticizing you, reducing all your good qualities, your abilities, achievements, and success to nothing. And you keep tolerating it and continue the relationship with such a person. No, you just need to set a boundary for yourself and say, I will not tolerate this, I do not forgive this, and I do not allow anyone to treat me this way. A person who devalues you and belittles your achievements is, of course, envious of you. Do not forgive people for their envy, because it is dangerous. Another thing you should never forgive or continue a relationship with such a person is when someone manipulates, threatens, or blackmails you with something. In other words, this is a toxic person. Do not forgive this. Do not continue relationships with such people, because it will only get worse. This is dangerous not only for your health, but also for your life. Keep such a distance from toxic people that they cannot reach you. Increase that distance. Test at what distance these people stop having a destructive impact on your life. At what distance they can no longer reach you and can no longer affect you emotionally. That is, this could be physical distance, it could be emotional distance, or it could be the gray rock method, as you know. When a person responds with one-word answers like yes, no, or I don't know. Don't give such people your emotions because they feed off your negative emotions. Very often, such blackmailers and manipulators turn out to be your close ones, and it is very difficult to establish this distance and your own boundaries with them because they keep getting violated over and over again. They couldn't care less about your boundaries. And finally, do not forgive when no one has asked you for forgiveness, because any apology requires a reciprocal gesture. Also, do not forgive when people apologize insincerely. And such forms as, for example, sorry for everything. It especially makes me laugh when on Forgiveness Day, some people send such messages, sorry for everything, but everything equals nothing. That's not a real apology, it's just formal, it's insincere. Another form of apology I'd like to point out as insincere is when someone says, if I offended you, then I'm sorry. What's with the if? Are you not sure that you offended me? Do you really not know that you offended me? So it's like if you somehow imagine in your head that I offended you, well then, sorry, just tossing you a little something, like a handout, as they say, from on high. Don't accept apologies like that. Another form of apologies, I regret it. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I behaved badly, but. And then comes the explanation and justification. But everyone used to do that. Everyone hit their kids. For example, that's what our parents say to justify themselves. Or, but you drove me to it. This isn't really an apology at all. It's just an excuse. There's no sincerity here. It all sounds formal and manipulative. A sincere apology is when a person clearly states what they are apologizing for, specifically for this, and this thing, for that situation. And the person states clearly and specifically what they are apologizing for. Only then can the apology be considered sincere. The person doesn't make excuses, doesn't say things like, well, I didn't know, or I didn't mean to, or, well, it was something else. None of that is an apology. It's all just excuses. You just need to apologize for specific things and say that there is no excuse for them. Only then can the apology be considered sincere. But it often happens that people don't know how to apologize because they actually can't fully take responsibility for their actions, their reactions, their words, or even their own health and life. These are people who are emotionally immature. I also invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to click subscribe and the bell so you'll be the first to know about new releases on my channel. And don't forget to give a like if you found this video helpful. And write in the comments what you think about whether you should force yourself to forgive when you just can't bring yourself to do it.